This theme is about what to consider in children's mental health. The purpose is not to educate people about diagnosis, as mental health is about so much more, especially for children who've experienced separations, grief, and loss. There's a lot to be considered before they should get a diagnosis, and our field hasn't always gotten assessing or diagnosing for this population of children right. Parents and professionals have also gotten caught up in children's behavior rather than realizing the complex impact of their experiences. This is only an hour theme to hone in on all of these key points. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts. We'll begin this theme with understanding. People so often equate the term mental health with diagnoses. So we're going to clear that right off their minds with the slide out the gate that refers them to resources to learn more about diagnosing. The idea is to settle them into the range of things to consider around mental health rather than getting stuck there. And this is a really good example of the layered learning approach that we take in NTDC. The content's going to gradually build participants' understanding of a concept, and in this case, it's that there are many considerations in understanding children's behaviors. We would not recommend placing this theme early in your sequence of themes for this reason. We want to be sure that participants have the foundational understanding of attachment, separation, grief, and loss, and both trauma themes before they can really understand mental health. We'll go into a short activity on understanding behaviors where we'll use a whiteboard to ask participants about concerning behaviors of children. In this activity, we're both wanting them to think about the reality that children may have behavioral concerns and how they'll feel about those behaviors. In this activity, be sure to draw out a range of behaviors, those that we see on the outside, which are called externalizing behaviors, and those that we may not see at all, the internalizing behaviors. There's also a parent tip sheet handout with this material so that they leave the activity starting to feel empowered in handling these behaviors. We'll then cover this assessment slide, which is action-packed. This is so important. It's the heart of the theme. Participants and mental health professionals really need to understand the profound impact in all of these areas. Because loss is so central to the experiences of children who will be fostered or adopted, we want to make really sure that everyone is reading more about the range of issues. So we've got an article on the 7 core issues we want them to read. And we're going to have an excerpt from the article just to entice them to read it. So you're going to bring up a volunteer and have them read the excerpt. Be sure you read it yourself and you understand it so that you can recommend it and answer questions on it. The other major cornerstone in understanding children's mental health are their experiences of trauma. So you'll end this section by showing the intersecting diagnosis slide to illustrate how certain diagnostic criteria can look the same as the symptoms of trauma. The last section is about treatment for children. We want participants to clearly know that medication is not the answer. In some cases, it may be a part of what's helpful, but we want to educate them with the statistics of over-medicating children in foster care. And we'll show a video with child psychiatrist Dr. Lisa Collins, who shares that therapy and other supports are really important in addition to any medication that she may prescribe. So for parents who are fostering, there's a slide on their role with medications, should it be prescribed, and know that there's also a handout on this to really reinforce this for participants who need it. You can hide this slide and you don't have to discuss this at all if the participants won't be fostering. So after that, we'll play the language around labels game. And this is going to help participants talk about mental health needs appropriately. So we're going to use 3 index cards in the classroom or 3 slides virtually, and you can hide those if you're not going to do virtual class. And each one will have 1 word. First, you're going to bring a volunteer up and ask them how the general public might use this word. Then the class is going to brainstorm more strengths-based ways to explain the child's behavior or need than using that word. You'll repeat that process for each of the 3 cards and the words, and you will see that there's a link in this discussion to the Preparing for and Managing Intrusive Questions theme. So feel free to refer back or forward depending on where that theme is in your series, so people really get honed in on language and around the connection that it has to children's mental health. At the end of this theme, you'll show a short video clip from the documentary Foster of a person named Jessica who grew up in foster care, and she had some really concerning and stigmatized behaviors when she was a teenager. And now we're going to highlight the clip that shows that her mental health challenges were not a life sentence. In fact, she has a beautiful success story. With proper support, all success is possible for children, and this clip really brings that home. The reflection relevance activity ends this class. It hits home success with mental health by asking who they know that has success with mental health considerations and the important role that support played in that person's life. The key takeaways for this theme is that we're looking to increase understanding of mental health. We want to emphasize destigmatizing so that participants can internalize this and become part of the solution around mental health. You'll see this message clearly in this theme and concretely, things like using more appropriate language. Notice that we start and end this theme the same way, showing success with mental health vulnerabilities. With proper supports and understanding, children with mental health and life adversity truly can thrive, which is why it's so important for professionals and parents to have and give hope in this theme. So now let's talk about some areas where you might get tripped up and some strategies to address them. The first is the diagnosis discussion. This was originally conceived as a more detailed section, but parents really don't need to know the ins and outs of all the diagnosing unless their children actually receive one. And so we've given 2 strong resources for them to learn more, and you can refer them to those resources. Another thing that could happen is that people could get carried away with personal stories around mental health or diagnosing. Tread lightly here. It takes too much time and it takes you off base. So just acknowledge them and move forward by keeping the conversation focused on children and their needs. The other area is the language around labels game. Keep everyone, the volunteers and the class participants, engaged by asking them all to help each other out with the questions. So it should be pretty interactive. Be sure you've explained the concept of person-centered and strengths-based well before you get going, and that'll help too. You might also need to give an example when you ask how the general public might use this word. If they're looking confused, that might help. Many times participants and sometimes professionals come into class nervous or with stereotypes about mental health concerns of children. But this theme gives every reason to hope and see pathways to success. It's a theme of empowerment. It shows the power of support and education, 2 things we all directly have the ability to impact.